Okay, everybody, this is the official beginning of the Green Parties of the West Conference, and depending on where you're from, I want to welcome you to California, to Southern California, or to Santa Monica. We have a lot to celebrate, I think. The Greens in this country have come a long, long way in the last couple of years. With the acceleration of the state Green parties, we have taken our message out to vastly larger numbers than we had in the previous years, vastly larger numbers, and we have begun to win real political power for Green ideas. And I think that that's a very significant step, and we ought to give ourselves a hand for making that step. Now this weekend, the hope is that we can do two main things. We can gain the knowledge from each other, from what we went through, particularly in the November election campaigns. And that in so doing, we can build a foundation for much greater progress in the future, progress in the Green way, of course, and in two ways for the future, so that we know where we're all at politically, because we're coming from a lot of different places, and Green can mean a lot of different things and to a lot of different people, and so that we can begin to coordinate our actions better in the future and build better and better foundations for our common actions. Today, our focus is going to be looking at local races, statewide races, and national races, learning from November. Tomorrow will be a strategy discussion. All right, what we're going to do now is have a short presentation from the Greens from Alaska, Arizona, California, Hawaii, and New Mexico. We'll hear how these parties got started, what they needed to do to qualify, how they did in the last elections, and generally how their state is structured. And starting in alphabetical order, which avoids all of political conflict, we'll start with Ronnie Rosenberg from the Green Party of Alaska.
Hello, everyone. I know it's not very green to talk about the most this and the most that, but I guarantee everyone in this room, including other people from Alaska, that where I come from is the coldest place. When I left home last week, it was minus 58 degrees below zero. And the plains were sort of iffy because when it gets that cold, the ice fog settles in. And I was real concerned I wouldn't be able to come here. However, miraculously, it warmed up to 15 below and everything was We became a state official party in Alaska in 1990. According to our state election laws, a statewide candidate needs to get 3%. And so Jim Sykes ran for governor of Alaska, along with Jean Marie Crum, who was the lieutenant gubernatorial candidate, an Athabascan woman from Anchorage. And they ran, they started a petition drive, got the requisite number of signatures, and ran and got 3.8% of the vote. And that put us on the party. We had 200 registered Greens at that time in 1990. We now have 2,050 registered Greens. The Division of Election tells me we are the fastest growing political party. And they also tell me every time I have to call them that we are the ones that have all our paperwork in order. So they like us down in Juneau. We are organized into 8 bioregions throughout the state. We have areas where we are now starting to form green groups that are not yet organized. So considering that the state of Alaska has only 550,000 people, that's pretty good. That's pretty good progress. I'm sure most of you have seen the maps of the United States with Alaska superimposed over it. It takes up half the country, so you have an idea of the travel problems we have. What we rely on most usually is the EcoNet network for communicating with one another, and that's proved invaluable because our phone costs are triple. Long-distance phone costs are triple what they are in the lower 48. At any rate, in the last election, we had a host of candidates running. We had 2 people running for state senate and 3 people running for state house. We had 2 borough assembly candidates and a candidate for U.S. Senate, a candidate for U.S. House. While none of them prevailed in their races, they all made substantially good showings. The Democrats are very nervous. They're starting to come forward and offering us staffing positions, and you can be on this committee and that committee if you don't run a candidate. So it shows that they're recognizing that people are beginning to recognize and not be afraid to vote Green. We are quite fortunate to have 2 seated Greens, including the highest elected official in the United States, which is Cordova Mayor Charles Kelly Weaverly. And also Mike Milligan, who was a candidate for Borough Assembly, who won in that race. And is a 2-time Borough Assembly person in Kodiak. We work really well together. This is probably maybe not the time to go into it, but reading email, which I do quite regularly, one of the things I would encourage all parties to do is to put aside your personal differences and your personal philosophical agendas and work toward the common goal of getting Green candidates elected. Because otherwise, we become yet another group, and groups are neat and they're interesting, but they don't accomplish lasting change. In Alaska, we are slowly working to overcome the stigma of being Greens. We carry an extra stigma with the native people because of the name Green is very similar to Greenpeace, and many people have differences with the Greenpeace organization. And so we don't want to badmouth Greenpeace because lots of us like Greenpeace and many of us are members, but at the same time we work to overcome that. And just a lot of the bioregional differences that we have from region to region. It's a very, very good group and a group that's on real solid footing now. So we now can work on doing proactive things and not having to spend lots and lots of time on process and structure. And I look forward to watching other parties grow. We have a platform, we have all sorts of resolutions and things in an organized fashion. So I did not bring a lot of paperwork because it would have been a lot to carry on the planes. I can make 4 connections. But if anyone is interested, please see me and I can get those materials to you. Thank you. Did you have a question? Yeah, what's the membership again? We had 2,050, and I believe it's now up to 2,150 in terms of registered Greens. Are there any other questions?
The next presentation will be from the Green Party of Arizona, and we have two people. We have Carolyn Campbell, who is the state co-chair, and Bruce Gungle, who is their treasurer.
We're pretty proud of the work that we did in Arizona this year, and we've got a lot of great stories, and I'm finding out that everybody here has a lot of great stories, and I sure hope we have time to hear those from each other. What we want to concentrate on here this morning is the mechanics of ballot status, because it's real confusing and it sounds like it's real different from every other state. And it takes a while too. We don't really understand it all in Arizona yet. So real briefly, I wanted to tell you the history. In February of '90, a few of us got together and started talking about a Green Party in Arizona. Some came from within the Green movement, particularly in Tucson, and there were a lot of people that that came from different areas outside of the Green movement, and we all got together and have been working towards ballot status until June of '92 is when we got on the ballot. Demographics. It's interesting in Arizona. There's about 3.5 million people in Arizona, and about 2.5 million of them are in the Phoenix area. About 750,000 of them are in the Tucson area. So the other 13 counties, there's not a lot of people in there. And Bruce is going to tell you about the ballot requirements, and then we'll talk a little about continuing representation. And we're going to try to talk fast because it's confusing.
Okay, in Arizona, unlike any other state that we're aware of, in order to get a new political party on the ballot, you have to work within jurisdictions. We call it jurisdiction specific. By that, what I mean is that in order to get on the state ballot, you need to collect a certain percentage of signatures from the electorate statewide. I believe it's 2% of the electorate in the state of Arizona have to sign a petition saying it's okay for Arizona to get on the ballot. Now, once a political party, a new party, is on the ballot statewide, that only means that they can run candidates at the state level or the federal level. So you can run candidates for the State House of Representatives, the State Senate, or for federal positions. It does not entitle you to run local candidates. You can't run county candidates, and you cannot run city candidates in cities that have partisan elections, such as Tucson. In order to get on the ballot at the county level, what we have to do in Arizona is the same thing that we have to do at the state level. We have to collect a certain number of signatures at the county level that allows us to get on the ballot for county board of supervisors and other county positions. And likewise in Tucson, I think Tucson's the only city in Arizona that has partisan elections. We have to collect that certain percentage of signatures to get on the ballot the first time. Let's see. Okay, the numbers that we needed in Arizona to get on the state ballot this time, we needed 14,072 signatures. Now for the individual counties, for the county that Phoenix is in, which is Maricopa County, they needed to collect approximately 11,000 signatures to get on the ballot in Maricopa County. Maricopa County, the Phoenix metropolitan area, as probably many of you know, is sort of a bastion of conservative politics, very conservative. They had a real tough time up there. They were able to collect 10,000 signatures, but not enough to be able to run county candidates. However, the county signatures also count towards the state requirement. So Maricopa actually collected, the Phoenix area actually collected a majority of the signatures we needed to get on the ballot, even though they couldn't run local candidates up there. The Tucson County, which is Pima County, we needed just under 4,000 signatures, and we got well over 5,000. We qualified without too much trouble. Cochise County, where Al is from, which is where the city of Bisbee is and the city of Tombstone, needed something a little over 300 signatures, I believe, 400, and they got 600 or 700. They did a really fine job down there. And then Coconino County, where Flagstaff is, needed about 300 signatures. They got 500. So in Pima County, where Tucson is, in Cochise County, where Bisbee is, and Coconino County, where Flagstaff is, they were able to run county-level candidates. No other county in Arizona could field candidates as Greens, of course I'm talking about here. But we could also field state candidates across the state. So there were people who ran in the Phoenix metropolitan area for the State House of Representatives, but they couldn't run for the Maricopa County Board of Supervisors, for instance. It's a little bit different. Now, one of the interesting things, one way that this does work to our advantage, separating the state from the counties, is that in order to stay on the ballot, we're going to need to register 2/3 of 1% of the voters in Arizona green. Now, that's going to be it's a big requirement. It's about 20,000 registered Greens that we're going to need statewide, I believe. It might be a little bit less than that. But in any case, again, a bulk of those people are going to have to come out of the Phoenix metropolitan area, and that's going to be tough. But we can still stay on the ballot in Cochise County, in Pima County, and so on if we register 2/3 of 1% of our county voters green. So we can stay on the ballot at a local level without having to stay on the ballot at a state level, which is a different way of doing things. And I guess you're going to take it from there. I bled over a little bit.
Yeah, a couple things I want to add about where the numbers came from. For statewide office, the 2% that Bruce was talking about was we needed to get signatures from 2% of the number of people that voted in the last governor or presidential election, whichever applied, and it was a governor's election of 1990. And for the county office, to get on county status, we need to get 1 1/3% of the number of people that voted for the last county attorney in the last county attorney's race, and then city, which would only be city of Tucson. It's the only partisan race. We needed to get, or will need to get, 1 1/3% of the number of people that voted for the mayor in the last mayor's race. And that was the only way that you can get on as a new party. For a continuing party, there's actually 2 methods to stay on the ballot. One, which is already passed and we didn't get on by this method, was for statewide to get 5% of the vote for whatever office is the highest office up for grabs in that jurisdiction. So we would have had to have a Green candidate for president in Arizona, and that candidate needed to get 5%. Well, obviously we didn't do that, so we were not automatically qualified for continuing representation. In the counties, you need to actually have a candidate for county attorney. That's deemed the highest office, and we need to get 5% of the vote for that candidate for county attorney. None of the counties had a county attorney on the ballot. Somebody stepped forward in Pima County, where Tucson is, after the primary. So we actually had a write-in candidate for county attorney in Pima County, and she had a 17-day race, and she got 1% of the vote write-in. And Claudia Elquist isn't a real common name, and it's kind of hard to spell. So we were pretty proud of that. And that would have counted if the write-in candidate got 5%. And she really ran a great campaign.
That was over 3,000 write-in votes.
3,300, close to 3,300 write-in votes. And yeah, we were dealing with some dinosaurs in the election departments too, so they weren't going to take any, if they had 1 L instead of 2. And the other way to stay as a party is what Bruce mentioned, which is to get 2/3 of 1% of the registered voters in whatever jurisdiction. Again, it's jurisdiction specific, of the voters registered as Green voters. And so in Phoenix, in Maricopa County, they can't do that because they never got on as a new party, so they're going to have to start from scratch either way. But again, we're going to need them for the statewide status. We need about 13,000 registered Greens by June 1st of '94 to stay on the ballot as a state party. Pima County, we need about 3,000 registered Greens. Right now we have about 1,500 registered Greens in the state, and we have about 500, I believe, in Pima County. Let's see. And then just a footnote on that is that the city of Tucson, the only partisan local elections are in the odd years, so we haven't been on as a new party yet in the city of Tucson, so we have to start from scratch in the city elections this year, even though Pima County and the state of Arizona are already on the ballot. And let's see, that's probably enough. The only other is the party organization. The state law specifically sets out how parties are organized in Arizona, just word for word. And we started out a couple years ago going along with the state law, and we saw how ludicrous and non-green it was. So we decided to ignore the state law, and we're putting together our bylaws in as green of a fashion, and it's a long process. We've been dealing with it for over a year now, and what we have are state officers that basically get reelected pro tem every state meeting and we're getting real close to the finishing of our bylaws, and it's going to be real nice. Last election, we had 1 candidate for the state senate, we had 3 candidates for the state house, we had 1 candidate for county supervisor, the write-in candidate for county attorney. Those were 6 partisan races, and none of us won. We had 2 nonpartisan candidates in Cochise County for school board, and both of them won. So, thank you.
One last note, if you think this is difficult to understand, you should have been there when we were trying to figure it out. Election officials in Pima County are not the most helpful individuals, but we probably know more about it now than anyone else in the county, and for this reason, Carolyn Campbell has applied for the Director of Elections position in Pima County, which is now open.
One more thing, I know we're taking too long, but what happened, the reason that the Director of Elections got fired is that it came out after the election that in his, in the election, in his poll worker training classes, he had instructed his poll workers that if more than 1 person came into the polls wearing green, they were to kick them out and they weren't going to let them vote. I don't know if any of you heard about that. Oh, yeah. Anyway, yeah. So it was really nice. The couple that came in wearing green together was an older couple. One was registered Republican, one was registered Democrat. Neither of them had heard of the Green Party. They got kicked out. Everybody heard about it, and he got fired. So, sweet revenge.
Next presentation is from the Green Party of California, and we'll be featuring one of our sometimes state spokespeople Hank Chapot, who also, together with Regina Andrizzi, graced the cover of the Bay Guardian in a key article during our ballot status drive. So, thanks.
Hi, thanks. Hello? These working?
You have to be loud.
Okay. I'm going to go real quick through the history of the party, and then I wanted to tell you a little bit about some of the stuff we've done the last month or two in the Bay Area that tell you a little bit more about how we're using the party now that we have it. During the COC days, the Green Committees of Correspondence, there were 20 or 30 locals in the state of California, about 400 members. There was also a group from, it's a long story, a group called the CELOists, who had registered the name Green and were registering voters, had only registered 400 or 500 voters. Kent Smith, Roger Picklum, and a few other people, also Bob Von Holt, challenged their right to use the name. And the Secretary of State ruled that the Greens, the COC Greens, had a legitimate claim to the name Green Party. We started the registration drive in 1990. After polling all of the locals, asking them if they wanted to get in on the registration drive, we needed 80,000 or 78,000, which was 1.5% of the turnout in the last gubernatorial race. We came in at about 109,000, and this is we had to ask people to change their registration affiliation from 40 or 50%, 60% Democrat, 20 or 30% Republican. A lot of peace and freedom, some libertarian, and a lot of people who had never registered before. So it wasn't just a petition drive, it was a voter registration drive. So 110,000 people had to decide if they could call themselves a Green. And we finished that. The deadline was January 1st, 1992. We chose that route because it built a state organization. We could have had Kent Smith run for governor, get 3.5% of the vote, and put us on the ballot like in Alaska, which some states I think is a great idea. We used it the long way, which took 2 years. We got about 40,000 registrations in the final month, 6 weeks. But we did end up with locals all over the state and hundreds of really activated people. This party during that time and since has been managed or run by a coordinating committee of 20 persons. Some of those people are here today. They're picked, 13 of them are picked from regional locations. We have California broken up into 10 regions based on the bioregional description. And then 6 or 7 of the seats are picked at large. And the coordinating committee is not a policy-making body. It basically manages, communicates, and was put together for the registration drive. Okay, in the November election, I believe, if my numbers are right, we had 37 candidates, 15 of which were partisan. In the Bay Area, there were about 10 nonpartisan races. In San Diego, there were 11. Those were the largest clusters of nonpartisan races. Then around the state, people ran for assembly. About 14 people ran for assembly in one state senate race. The highest percentage was 13% in San Bernardino County. A gentleman named Joseph Desist. Mindy got 10%. Kent got 10%. 5 to 10% was a reasonable voter percentage. The average was about 5% when you average in all the races. We had spent a lot of time trying to figure out how to have some control over who represents the party. It's caused a lot of trouble, but it's also helped us to discuss, the politics of running for office. We don't think that being a spoiler is going to help us if we do it too often. I mean, if there had been a Green running in the Boxer-Hershenson race, there's a real good chance Barbara Boxer would have lost. We've come up with a couple of different methods. One is we got a judge to rule that we could have none of the above on all of our ballots. We also tried a rule in our bylaws that was called the open or closed races rule, where the Greens, locals within a district, an electoral district, sometimes 3 or 4 counties worth, were we planned to have people get together and discuss the merits of the race, look for a good person, decide if it was a feasible race, if they had the resources. It turned out that a lot of people had trouble with it. Some people found it was just another set of hoops to get over, was to ask the Greens in the area for permission to run for office. So we dropped that rule in January 1st this year. We just let it sunset because we'd given it a one-year sunset clause to try it out, and it worked. Our first year we had 35 candidates, about 15 partisan. There were a lot of people that were sort of scouting out the Green Party because we have something that's extremely valuable in California, is a space on the ballot. It takes to run as a presidential candidate in California, it takes you 500,000 signatures, which is expensive. So we got scouted by the Fulani people, by the Natural Law Party. Larry Hagelin wanted a space on the ballot. The only really legitimate candidate, I think, was Ron Daniels. He came to our convention in January. But having the rules that we had in place last year, I think helped us. It caused a lot of internal problems, but it helped the party avoid sending up some real turkeys. And there were some real turkeys in the who wanted to run.
Of course, this is an objective presentation.
Yeah. Because a lot of people felt that it was another level of hoops you had to jump through to get to be able to run.
We had to agree to sunset it, or else it never would have passed in the first place. So it was an automatic sunset unless we wanted to keep it going afterwards.
Yeah, that caused more divisive arguing in the beginning of the year than any other thing we ever did.
Short? Okay, I'm done with that. Anyway, we can talk about that later. We're coming up with other ideas, like the signature requirement is only 50 signatures. We could write in our bylaws that you have to get 500 signatures to become a candidate in the Green Party, and that would require a little bit of work on behalf of a candidate. And this is just so that we don't have to open the papers Monday morning and say that so-and-so is already filed, and we're stuck with Randy Toller for our candidate for president. Okay, so we didn't have any spoilers in last year's race. The future, any rank and file member of the California Green Party can run for office now.
We're unified.
Yeah. Okay, real quick, in the Bay Area, I just was riding down on the plane yesterday, and I looked at my calendar. During the month of January, I just wanted to write down some of the stuff that had gone on, because I want people to know how we're using the party. I mean, we're not just sitting around examining races and thinking about which politician we should try to knock off. On the 4th of January, one of our members, on his own, sued the Department of Health Services, held a press conference, gave credit to the Green Party, although it was a little bit out of process, sued the Department of Health Services over a medical waste incinerator in Oakland, which is probably one of the most blatant examples of toxic racism in the city of Oakland. They're burning plastic and chemotherapy waste and hospital waste for entire Northern California. Day after that, I went to the court hearing. He's suing under California Environmental Quality Act of 1970. We've been meeting regularly in the Bay Area to possibly put a statewide initiative for none of the above on the ballot. It started in September, October. There's 12 or 15 people that are committed to it. We set up an independent campaign committee because if we went through the party structure, it would take too long. We'd have to explain it too many times. So we just said, okay, we want to do this. Electoral reform is very important to Green parties, and we set up a separate campaign committee. Someday we'll ask the party for an endorsement. A little while later, about a week later, we have our county council meetings every month. We have two people that are working really hard on the North American Free Trade Agreement, which the California Green Party's already come out in opposition to. The next day, one of our women activists from the Bay Area participated in a speaking event with the new COCs, which are the former Communist Party, USA. They're calling themselves Committees of Correspondence. She was up there with Tony Mazzocchi from the Labor Party Advocates. The new party, somebody who had named James Vann, who participated in the People's Progressive Coalition in Ypsilanti's Peace and Freedom Party, and the Green Party. And of all those people, the Greens and the Peace and Freedom Party were the only ones that were talking about politics. The rest of them, the Labor Party advocates, non-electoral. The new party had a concept called fusion with the Democrats. You know, it's like they would enhance a good Democrat's chances by organizing around the person's campaign. It was kind of sad because Northern California is a hotbed of progressive, left, communist, radical politics, and the group was kind of, they just didn't have plans, didn't have any schemes, and weren't going to get involved in politics. So it seems that if the left or the progressives are going to ever get involved in politics, a ballot qualified party helps. It gives people a place on the ballot without the signature drive. 2 days later, there was a bicycle protest in Berkeley, which I went on. It was the first sunny day after all the rain, and there were 5 or 6 people there that I'd met through the Green Party. We tried to ride bicycles on the freeway. 6 people got arrested. They tried to run over us. Somebody got a baton shoved in the spokes of their bicycle. So even in Berkeley, using the bicycle as a political symbol, the police just went gaga. It's still, even, you know, Berkeley's everybody's favorite eco city, and you're supposed to be bicycle friendly, but the police were all over us. It was kind of fun because it was sunny, and it's nice to. No, somebody stole my helmet. Oh, okay, I'm almost done. The next day after that,
What'd you do for breakfast?
Yeah, no, today, I'm just trying to give you a little rundown on what we're doing with the party because it's a thing we have. The Oakland Green Party was the next day or the Alameda County did a team building workshop, which Greens still do, still have those events where people learn to communicate better. We're supporting the office. We had a spaghetti dinner a couple days later to pay the rent. Some of our, this week, our elected Green in Berkeley, Donna Spring, has gotten involved in a really pretty serious low-income housing struggle. The NIMBYs in the neighborhood are trying to block a low-income housing project. And I believe Donna is the swing vote, although they put off the vote till next week. Members of the Alameda Women's Caucus have participated with the Women's Action Coalition. They did an action last Saturday at a fraternity up at Berkeley, protesting the university's whitewashing of a gang rape at a frat party. And this weekend, somebody's making a presentation to the Libertarian Party on the none of the above. Even though the Libertarians, their politics are a little strange, they are the most important organization in the nation for improving ballot access. They'll sue the Secretaries of State all over the place just to make it easier for people like us to get on the ballot. So that's how I spent my summer vacation.
Well, since we had a really good report on the Bay Area Green Party, maybe at the next Green Party of the West Conference, we'll hear from the California Green Party. Well, that's become obvious. Greg?
We won 11 nonpartisan races.
Yes, we won 11 nonpartisan races, 11 out of 20 in the state. That's 55%. And in terms of election rules, on Sunday's strategy discussion, we will talk about some of the things that Hank so briefly alluded to. Okay, next we're going to hear from the Island Green Party of Hawaii, Ira Rohter and Linda Martin.
First of all, I want to really acknowledge that there are many, many people who helped the Greens become real. And there's a tendency, as you all know, for the people who tend to be on the front to be sort of become the revered figures. But I must tell you, there genuinely is a revered figure, and it is Linda. She has taken on this party when it was a whole lot of who's going to show up tomorrow, and do we plan for 5 or 50? And she really did carry us through and made the ultimate sacrifice to becoming a candidate, although she seems to have liked it for some peculiar reason. The Green Party started really out of the movement, and I think this is pretty, I think this happened around a lot of places, and it probably goes back to the mid-'80s, 1985 or so, when Fritjof Capra came to the University of Hawaii and gave a speech. And it was amazing because this place was like 500 or 600 people who all came to hear the Tao of physics and all that kind of stuff, and he said I wasn't going to talk about it, I was going to talk about green politics. And we got about 200 people who signed up. We had these endless meetings, and people were all getting self-educated, and 100 of people would come to one meeting, and it became smaller and smaller. Someplace around about 4 years ago, I started to party, and originally were called the Aloha Greens. They made a run at getting on the ballot. It didn't get there. In Hawaii, you need 1%, which turns out to be somewhere over 4,000 signatures, which doesn't sound like a lot in California, but it certainly seems to be a lot. The short story is that we did get 8,000 signatures. On Earth Day, we filed with the Lieutenant Governor, who was quite surprised that we not only had the minimal number, but we actually had almost doubled it. We had a mad scramble to select candidates. This was greatly, we had within 2 months essentially to get people to run. This was greatly aided by the fact that of the 3 people who were pretty much running things, 2 of us bugged out and went on our long vacations, and Linda was left pretty much to sort out what was going on. We had a notion that we didn't want anybody to run. Anybody can file. We thought we could select people, and we did in fact select people. We tried to interview people and see if they were genuinely Greens. We made a decision that not to run just a few very solid, credible people. And I must say that was primarily the basic orientation, is to be credible. We were not interested in being fringy. I had very strongly, when I'd gone to other islands, had said we were not going to get involved in the hemp issue. That would be the blow of death, or the kiss of death, or whatever you want to put it. The whole, I think, struggle, and we'll talk about this, is to become perceived as legitimate, credible candidates and not just fringies. We ended up with 17 people who we acknowledge as Greens, another person who filed, who sort of slipped through the screen because we thought that he was somehow been cleared by the people on Kauai. As I look at this list, I think we had about 5 people running for county council. 5 people on the Big Island, and maybe Keiko can correct this. I think we had 5 people running as Greens, 4 people on the Maui. We had 2 people running for the state Senate, 5 people running for the state House, and 1 person running for the U.S. Senate, and that was Linda. Linda did, in fact, get almost 14% of the vote against Senator Inouye, a man of extraordinary longevity and reveredness. Before the election, 80% of the Japanese voters were voting for Dan. After all of the sex scandal, 80% of the Japanese voters voted for Dan. Extraordinary old boy political machine, and that's really one of the themes of running in Hawaii. The Democrats own the place, lock, stock, and barrel, and sell it at good prices, and that's part of the story. We are very much involved now in thinking about 1994, which will be the election of a new governor. The state is really at a crisis where it will either turn into something like this on all the islands, or we will turn it. Our scheme is to become working with lots of people. I think it's essentially an alliance building. I'm working with people to put together a task force on sustainable agriculture. What the state has is a total absence of any plans, any vision, except to sell something to a resort developer. And business is a little bit slow now because the Japanese are having some problems. So there's kind of a whole lot of waiting around and in a recession. And so we're trying to do this. So we're working on sustainable agriculture, which really links together a lot of issues, economic conversion, the Hawaiian issue of sovereignty and self-determination, and affordable housing. And this is something that Linda has really taken hold of and is extraordinarily credible because she has really a terrific record in the legislature working with other legislators. So we're doing a lot of alliance building. I think we're coming across as 2 things. One, we're willing to speak the truth. We're willing to say, this is what's really going on, you guys. And secondly, we seem to be the only people in town who have a plan. And that's true for the environmentalists who want to save this tree or that particular lake or this bird or something like that. Many of them seem not to have any insight into the overall system. And the exception to that is the Big Island, and I think you'll see with Keiko, that's a very different breed of people out there. The other part of it is that we really have a lot of planning. That may be simply my bias. There's a book over there called The Green Hawaii. I put a promo in for it. It is a detailed attempt to lay out not only what is wrong with development, but also what you could do about it. It's sort of an upgrade on Kallenbach's book, Ecotopia, but it's a very solid piece of scholarship and so forth. Anyways, let me give this to Linda, who's sort of the mother figure of our attractive mother figure, right?
Thanks, Ira. Which one of these works? This one? This Ira covered the field here pretty well. I think the only thing that I'd like to add before, I really wanted to cut him off before he launched into a full-fledged diatribe about issues. See, we'll have lots of time to do that tomorrow. Well, we all will. I'm not real comfortable with the hero role, and I'll tell you a little more about that tomorrow when we talk about, or later today. When am I on? Later today. I'm still a little jet lagged out, I'm sorry. What I wanted to say was that we've had some real significant learning problems with our own organization. When we started, we were very much, should I say, Honolulu-centric. In other words, most of our activists, most of our organization was right in Honolulu on the island of Oahu. And it wasn't until we actually came, I mean, we knew that there were little pockets of greens around the other islands, but we really hadn't made an extraordinary effort to go out and bond with them and find out what it was they were concerned about and how we could work together and that sort of thing. However, as soon as we made ballot status, we realized that that was a mistake and that we had to fix it real fast. So fortunately, we had some wonderful activists on the other islands, like the folks from the Big Island, Keiko and Jack Davis, who was actually a defector from the Machine political organization, who took 40 people and walked out of a Democratic Party convention, took all of the environmental activists out the door, and immediately went over, picked up the phone, called Ira on Oahu, and said, "Hey, we just walked off. We walked out of the Democratic Party. What can we do? How can we be Greens?" Ira went over and organized them in one weekend. The whole Big Island went. So the organizing efforts extraordinary difficulties of space and money and all kinds of things can be overcome if you have the right people in your county organizations. We have 4 counties in Hawaii and more islands than that, so it's even more complicated than it sounds. What we're doing, I think, in the future with our party organizing, fortunately we are on for 94, so we don't have to give it a whole lot of thought right now. But we do have a rather draconian rule that we have to win 10% of the vote in a statewide race to stay on as a qualified party, or we have to go back on the hustings and qualify by petition again. And as we said before, petition drives are very difficult in Hawaii because the people essentially have a plantation mentality. I mean, they really kind of don't mind that the Democratic machine is running everything. It's sort of like something has run their lives always, and so they're pretty comfortable, and they're very reluctant to sign their name and their social security number on anything that they're not familiar with, they don't know, and of course they don't know the Greens. So we're hopeful that we won't have to do another petition drive. But at this moment in time, it looks like we're probably going to be able to field some candidates on statewide offices again and qualify again for 96 in that way. And we're working real hard to make ourselves a true statewide organization. We have rewritten our bylaws. We wrote them once, and we have rewritten them to acknowledge the fact that we have a total of 4 counties, including all the other islands. So we will be having, in fact, we will be having our next statewide meeting April 2nd, 3rd, and 4th on the Big Island in a wonderful campground called Pohakaloa, Mauna Kea at Pohakaloa. And we may have a few spaces available if anybody's interested in coming. The registration is going to be about $50, plus or minus 10 or 15, I think. Probably plus, in fact, if you're counting on it. So your big item would be getting a ticket over there. But please see us if you're interested in that, and we'll keep you in mind if we have any openings for that meeting. And if you want to know anything about bylaws, writing the bylaws, don't ask me. Ask Karen Lofstrom, who is here and has done a wonderful job of working on our bylaws there. Yay, Karen! And we'd be happy to share our experiences with anybody that's interested. And I think it's exciting, and I think it's exciting that we're all here this weekend. And go Greens! What can I say?
Now, before introducing our final speaker from New Mexico, everybody has said to me in the weeks leading up to this, Mike, what's your real political agenda on this event? And I think that it's time that I show my true colors. Ta-da! So, there it is. Okay, enough nonsense. Our next speaker is going to be from the Green Party of New Mexico, Cris Moore.
Hi. We drove 14 hours yesterday. We're proud of that. Right now, just Larry Bogad and I are here. Two others from the Santa Fe group, Irene Owen and Michael Castro, are hopefully joining us. Maybe they're sleeping in, or maybe they went to the beach. Well, New Mexico is, the Greens there are organizationally very young. We only have, well, New Mexico is a population of 1.5 million. We only have 4 local groups. Santa Fe, Taos, Albuquerque, and a student local at the University of New Mexico, which is also part of the Green Youth Network. All of those are in the northern half of the state. We do hope soon to start locals in Las Cruces, Las Vegas, Los Alamos, a lot of losses, and Gallup, which is not a loss or a loss. In the northern half of the state, we're basically the second party, because similar to Hawaii, we have a democratic machine there, which is quite right-wing, and in some counties is physically dangerous to run against. And I moved there from upstate New York, and I have to say it's taken me a long time to adjust my culture of politics and activism to New Mexico, but that's a very important thing. I mean, we can't hope to succeed unless we're really willing to learn about the place where we are and learn about past movements there. Anyway, we became a party last May, I think. Last May. I joined right around then. It's very easy in New Mexico to start a party. If any of you would like to start a party, you can come to New Mexico, and you can probably do it in a week, because it only takes you about 4,000 signatures on a petition. 4,000. And that's nice. I mean, New Mexico makes California or New York look like Sweden. I mean, there are a lot of things about which we just don't have that many laws, which is sometimes good and sometimes bad, obviously. Anyway, of those 4 groups, only the Taos Greens felt ready to run candidates last November. We ran 2 candidates, both for statewide office. Abraham Gutman, who'd been living in Taos for 6 years and sells clothing for a living, and who had been involved in the Green Local before. For state representative, and Andres Vargas, who ran for district attorney, they both got over 40%. And Vargas got 49% in his home county. His district covered 3 counties. So we did very well, and they both just pounded the pavement a lot. Let's see. We had some shenanigans. I don't know if any of you are familiar with a book called The Almanac of American Politics. It's a very useful book. Under New Mexico, you'll find the sentence that New Mexico elections are known to have irregularities that would make a Chicago ward committee man blush. Green observers sent to the Taos voting booth were told, you can't be here, go home. They did. They were a little bit shy. They didn't stick up for themselves, but not next time. So since we have so few locals, I just wanted to say real briefly what some of the other ones are doing. In Santa Fe, our emphasis has been on community organizing, and we felt that we were not ready to run candidates, but we do plan to run or endorse candidates in the city and county elections next year. We've been helping a local village called La Cienega fight a golf course in their area. We co-sponsored a Columbus Day rally, which was quite large, with a number of Chicano and Indian groups. Most recently, we've gotten involved in an issue involving property taxes, and the fact that maybe this is happening in your area too. In some neighborhoods of Santa Fe, property values are going up so quickly as the areas get gentrified and yuppified that people cannot pay them and are forced to move out. And this is taking cultural and economic diversity away from Santa Fe. So this is a very good green issue. It's an issue of economic justice. It's an issue of cultural diversity, social ecology, if you will. And just on Thursday, just before we got in the car, we had a very good rally attended by 150 people, which is a lot for Santa Fe, mostly Hispanic senior citizens, people who this was probably their first rally for many of them. And although it was not plastered all over the place Green Party rally, we were introduced to the crowd by a woman they respect as speakers from the Green Party. She had been involved in La Cienega, that village we helped. She said, you know, the Greens have really been helping us out. I had this guy, sweet old guy named Cruz Rios, always wears a baseball cap. He, after we stood holding a sign with him for a while on the road, he said, you know, I just really want to thank you because so few people are actually trying to help us, and the Greens are really trying to help us. And my friends haven't heard of the Greens before, but I tell them that the Greens started this thing. So we really believe that doing that kind of community organizing is what is going to get trust of the Greens established, especially in communities like Santa Fe, where, you know, we have a large white environmentalist community, which sadly is often rather passive and not necessarily that activist. Then we have a large Hispanic community, which has a lot of community spirit, is conservative on many issues, but they're the ones who actually possess the political power. And unless we win their hearts, we will get nowhere. So I guess we really believe in that approach. And hopefully next year in the city and county elections, we'll do very well. The Albuquerque local has been very involved in a statewide health care plan that's been proposed by a progressive Democrat, and the student group just started. We have an informal state structure. We're still kind of dealing with that, and with only 4 locals, you can imagine that, you know, we can get by without being too clear on what we're doing, but we're trying to get clearer. And we're basically dealing with problems like, should the larger locals be represented more? Should it be based on registered voters? See, in New Mexico, there's no reason for us to register anyone green. It's purely symbolic. It's not part of our party status. And the only requirement to be registered green is if you're running a candidate. So a lot of us are still registered as Democrats, so we can throw our 2 cents in the primary. So, or should it be dues-paying members of the National? Should it be people who come to meetings? You know, should all the locals, whether old or young, large or small, get equal representation at the statewide level? This is the sort of thing we're dealing with. The state laws allow us probably more autonomy than in a lot of other states. We're allowed to define ourselves who our members are, which is good. In other words, we don't have to use the definition of registered Greens to say who can vote at our conventions. We're allowed to nominate at our convention. In other words, we don't have to have a primary. And I personally think that's good, especially with the size we have. Part of the reason we came here is because, young as we are, we like to think that New Mexico can provide a model of unity between different wings of the Greens and between the movement and the party. Our politics range the full Green spectrum, from people who recently coming from the Democratic Party who got tired of them selling environmental issues out, third-party environmentalists, to left Greens, you know, socialists, decentralized, anti-authoritarian socialists, of course, but socialists. So we have all these people in the group, and so far we're still working together. And the people down in Santa Fe, we may be more movement-oriented, but we recognize that those folks up in Taos getting 40% did us a hell of a lot of good. And in the same way as we develop organizing models that work, you know, they're asking us for help in organizing their local so that they can build the kind of presence in Taos that we've built in Santa Fe. So part of the reason we came here is because we heard, you know, sometimes there's a little bit of tension in some parts of the country about some of these things among the Greens. So we thought that we would come and try to offer some models of unity. That's about all. Thanks.